Have you ever walked into a store, headed for your favorite drink, and just found a big empty space on the shelf? You probably just figured, supply chain issues, right? But what if the reason was something way, way spookier? Today, we're diving into the wild story of how a digital attack literally emptied the shelves in Japan. Okay, so picture this. A gigantic warehouse, just stacked to the ceiling with cases of Asahi beer, soft drinks, all of it. But there's a huge problem. Nothing is moving. The trucks? Parked. The orders? Just piling up. The entire massive operation is just frozen. A total standstill. You know, it sounds like the setup for a bad joke, doesn't it? But for Asahi, one of the biggest beverage companies on the planet, this became a very real, very expensive corporate nightmare. And today, we're going to figure out exactly how it all went down. So, where does a story like this even begin? You might think it started with some blaring alarm at a server room, but nope, it started much more quietly, in a place everyone could see it. All of a sudden, in late 2024, convenience stores and supermarkets across Japan started putting up these little signs. Asahi products, we're talking their famous super dry beer, sodas, you name it, they were running low. Now, you have to understand, this is a huge deal. Asahi isn't some small-time brewery. They have something like a 40% share of the entire Japanese beer market. So when their stuff starts to disappear, everybody notices. So how on earth do you get from a simple, familiar can of beer on a shelf to a massive logistics warehouse in total lockdown? What's the connection? Well, the answer wasn't a problem with the trucks. It wasn't a factory issue. It was an invasion nobody could see.
So, yeah, what was the real cause? The culprit that was emptying all those shelves? It didn't exist in the physical world at all. This was a highly coordinated digital heist.
And the weapon they used is called ransomware. The idea is actually brutally simple. Think of it like digital kidnapping. A hacker breaks into your system, locks up all your important files in a digital vault, and then sends you a note saying, "You want the key? You're going to have to pay up." And in this case, the crew that took credit was a pretty notorious gang known as Keelan. And these guys are not amateurs. They've got a long rap sheet of hitting major companies, and this time they set their sights on one of Japan's most iconic brands. And their attack was just devastatingly effective. First, they quietly slipped into Asahi's computer network. Then, once inside, they started encrypting everything, locking Asahi out of its own systems. And then, the final blow. They dropped the ransomware note, and the entire operation just ground to a halt. I mean, the impact was just catastrophic. All the modern, digitized systems that a global corporation relies on, gone. Wiped out in an instant. It got so bad that employees had to go back to taking orders with pen and paper. Seriously, like it was 1985. That's how complete the paralysis was. But look, stopping the beer from shipping out was just the first punch. The second wave of damage was about to hit, and this time it was going to get way more personal.
1.52 million. That is a staggering number. And that's not dollars. That's people. That's the number of customers whose personal data was potentially snatched during this attack. We're not talking about company secrets here. We're talking about the private info of the people who buy their drinks. Just let that sink in.
And the breach didn't just stop with the customers. Oh no, the blast radius was so much bigger. You're looking at data from over 275,000 employees and their families being exposed, plus contact info for another 114,000 business partners. The sheer scale of this leak is it's hard to even wrap your head around. So what exactly got out? Well, all the usual stuff. We're talking names, gender, addresses, phone numbers, email, a massive violation of privacy. But, and this is a really important but, there's one small piece of good news in all this chaos. It looks like no credit card information was taken. Financial data, at least, seems to have been safe. Now, an attack of this magnitude isn't something you just bounce back from in a day. For Asahi, this was the beginning of a long, painful, and very, very public fight to get back on its feet. And this timeline really shows you what a grueling battle it was. The attack hits on September 29th. Then you have all of October and all of November, 2 full months, where the company is basically just in crisis mode, trying to contain the damage. It wasn't until December that they could even begin to slowly, gradually start shipping things again. That is an eternity in the business world.
Of course, the company's president had to come out and publicly apologize for the whole mess. In his statement, you can just feel the immense pressure they were under, trying to rebuild their entire digital infrastructure while, at the same time, trying to reassure millions of people that they were taking this seriously.
But here's the thing that we really need to get. This wasn't just a case of one company having a really, really bad day. The Asahi attack is a perfect case study of a much bigger, much scarier global threat. I mean, think about it. Asahi was not an isolated incident. The carmaker Jaguar Land Rover got hit with a nearly identical attack that completely paralyzed its factories in the UK. So you've got beer in Japan and luxury cars in Great Britain. Totally different products, totally different countries, but the exact same playbook with the exact same crippling result. And that really brings us to the core lesson of this entire story. It's a wake-up call. In the hyper-connected world we all live in, that line between the digital and the physical, it's basically gone. One tiny digital weak link, one successful hack, is all it takes to completely break a real-world, physical supply chain. So that leaves us with a pretty unsettling question to think about. If this can happen to absolute giants like Asahi and Jaguar Land Rover, with all the money and resources they have, who's next? In this crazy digital world, what's the next household name that could be at risk?